One of my clients became a CEO because her predecessor had a heart attack. There was no training, there was no workshop, there wasn't even a handover document. She just one day woke up and found herself at the very top of a company. I was brought in and we had a conversation, and the first thing she said to me is, Susie, I have no idea what I'm doing. If that sounds familiar, you're going to want to watch the rest of this video. I call this type of client the accidental CEO, and they happen to make the best leaders. The people who are gunning for it, the people who are prepared for it their whole life, there's an ego there. There are politics, there are other undercurrents at play. So, accidentally, CEOs are some of the best CEOs out there. But they come to that role with concerns that the people who are ready for it do not. The thoughts they generally have going through their head are obviously huge quantities of imposter syndrome. But generally, what I'd say is when they reach that peak, they decide it is now up to them to know everything. They need to know everything there is to know about their company, and they need to be able to communicate in a way that shows they know everything they need to know about their company. They need to have Wikipedia levels of knowledge about their own company, and they need to know every single name. And it's just not true, because it's those kind of professionals that over communicate, that overcomplicate the message, that say 10 sentences when one would have been fine. There are actually only a few things they need to do in order to really communicate like a leader. And I'm going to take you through those three things in this video. King George VI was never actually meant to be the king. Prince Edward was, but Prince Edward wasn't because he married Wallis Simpson and was forced to abdicate the throne. King George had never been ready or preparing for this role, and he found himself suddenly the head of the monarchy. This was huge. And obviously, that role was a role that was going to require a huge amount of public speaking. And George didn't have it in him. He wasn't a natural public speaker, and he had quite a serious lisp. The most important thing he lacked was confidence. He never believed he was ready for the role. Famously, a speech coach and brilliant actor called Lionel Logue coached him, not only to be the best possible speaker he could have been, but to build and increase that confidence. So mentally, physically, he was prepared for the role he was never prepared for. It's the best example of the accidental CEO I can give you. So, what are the lessons you can take from that if you find yourself in a position of leadership or at the top of a chain when you never expected to be? Let's start with what a true leader sounds like. Because the mistake people make is that they have to demonstrate all of their knowledge, all of their intelligence. And that's because they're full of self doubt. They prove their credibility by just saying stuff in the hope that their audience goes, wow, yeah, that's really impressive. And the problem with that is obviously it doesn't work, but also it's rushed, it's garbled, it doesn't contain any of the information that's actually needed to be there. It's just this hot mess of information. Imagine being at the top of the chain and trying to get a very clean, clear message to cascade down, and you've just talked and talked and talked, and there is nothing valuable in there. Instead, you want to do the opposite. Ask yourself, what does all of this information boil down to? You've probably heard of the concept of think, feel, do. You can use that, but actually, I go a little bit further. It's not just about what do I want the audience to think about this? What do I want the audience to do as a result of this? What do I want the audience to feel about this? Ask yourself, what is the one thing I want the audience to remember as a result of everything I'm saying? When you have that key message, write it down, because now your job is simple. You just have to transfer that information from you to them. And if it's only a sentence, that should be really easy to do. If you've got that sentence, the best way to now deliver that sentence is like this: sentence, evidence, sentence. What is your statement or sentence? What is the evidence or example behind it? And then you just come back to your sentence or statement again. It's a really clean way of delivering a straightforward, concise message. Leadership takes brevity. So, lesson number one is the cleaner and the clearer you can make your messages, the better chance you have of people actually taking action as a result of everything you've just said. So, keep that one key message really pure, really simple, really clear. So, what does leadership actually sound like? Well, that brevity frees up a lot of space. And what you're going to do with that space is you are going to sound calm and controlled. And you're going to do that by pausing. Obama, Tony Blair, whatever you thought of them as politicians, they were very charismatic public speakers. And it's because they were going slowly and taking their time and creating space. For now, you don't need to worry about the stumble and the stutters. The odd or the odd is actually completely fine because that's how humans communicate. But if you start to consciously add in pauses, your speech will slow down, you'll sound more charismatic, and people will have more time to listen to what you actually have to say. If you think of Tony Blair, one thing he would do that was annoying but useful was he'd pause right in the middle of a sentence. And that meant that the press were forced to listen to him. Use that same trick. You want to sound human, but what you don't want to do is use a script. I'm a speech coach and I can always tell when my clients have resorted to scripting things out. It's boring, it's dull, and it shows a lack of confidence more than someone who is rambling and garbled and umming and erring all over the place. If I know that you're using a script, you've lost me completely. And it doesn't show me that you have the confidence and trust in yourself to be in a position of leadership. So, position number 1, ditch the script. It's not interesting, it's not useful. Instead, practice consciously adding in those silences. That's what's going to slow you down. That's what's going to make you sound so much more charismatic, give you the gravitas you're looking for, give you that presence and control that the great leaders have always had. The more you practice it, the easier that one gets. But trust me, I do know it doesn't come overnight. Last and most important, what does leadership actually feel like? Simon Sinek would probably say trust, and I'm inclined to agree. So, what creates trust? Easy. It's the above two things, and finally, asking the right questions. We think leaders have to be in this position of total control where they're constantly communicating, constantly the authority, we're constantly looking to them for advice. True leadership takes a step back and listens to the other voices in the room. A really basic and practical example of that might be think back to the last meeting you were in. Think back to the voices in that room. Which were the louder ones, which were the quieter ones, and which were the ones that were making space? And what was your role in all of that? Was your mindset, I need to land a point, I need to get something spectacular across here so that everyone knows that I'm good? Because that's exactly that imposter syndrome that I was talking about turning up. Instead, be the one that compliments others. The occasional, okay, I see where you're coming from. Yeah, I really like that point. Or even, tell me more. Those are the things that encourage other people to do the right thing. When it comes to asking the right question, they don't need to be groundbreaking. Questions like, so what's the challenge here? Or can you give me an example of what you're talking about? Or my favorite, if 6 months have passed and this project has done as brilliantly as it possibly could have done, what's happened? What does it look like? And how do we get there? And then all you have to do is take a big step back and listen. And if you've done 20% of the talking in that room and 80% of the listening, you are doing all the things you need to do to be in a position for great leadership. Trust, control, brevity. Those are the things you need to communicate.